The national landscape of ed reform had a lot to do with the bargain in Seattle. Things going on in other school districts, such as using test scores for pay for performance, or tying student test scores to the evaluation, which was happening in places like DC, Denver, Chicago, got people in the community here in Seattle kind of in an uproar about what should we be doing differently in Seattle to help our kids succeed here. This is going to be looked at as a new day amongst unions in this country. It can show that we're willing to talk about ed reform, but it doesn't need to be an either-or situation. Either you do nothing, or you go down a road of untested, unresearched ideas that anybody comes up with. This is a well-thought-out proposal that met the needs of both the district and of the SEA, and ultimately, it's good for students. In last year's contract, we put a language in it that said that we would have a new evaluation system in place this year. What we did is we had a task force in place that looked at a new 4-level rating system based on the Charlotte Danielson model. We took that and we had a joint task force made up of SEA members and the district administration, and they took the model, added some cultural competency components into it to reflect our diverse population that we have here in Seattle. And this group has been working on this jointly to develop a tool that no longer rates somebody satisfactory or unsatisfactory, but actually has a 4-level rate system where it's no longer okay to just be an okay teacher. It has innovative and proficient at the top, and then basic and unsatisfactory at the bottom. After 4 years of teaching, you're expected to be proficient in all 4 domains of the evaluation. Ultimately, what this agreement means is that the quality of teachers is going to be higher. For some reason, that wasn't good enough for the superintendent or the school board here in Seattle, and they brought something back to us called SERVE. They took what the task force had developed, made that one part of a final evaluation, and then made student test scores a percentage, made school-wide test scores a percentage, so even kids that you don't teach, their test scores would count for part of your evaluation. And then they were actually even going to have parents, students, and your colleagues surveyed on how well you do, and that would be considered a percentage of your evaluation. That was kind of a big shock because we have been jointly working on this task force to develop an evaluation tool that really emphasized professional growth, and to throw all those other things on top of it was just, as I said, it was a big shock to us. And we started hearing from our members who said, we cannot accept this proposal, don't you dare accept this proposal. And so the concern was, okay, where are we going to end up? Is this going to end up in a strike, which we never talked about, although the district was getting prepared for one. But we were concerned because we knew that our members couldn't accept this proposal. So our members aren't afraid of accountability. In fact, they want to be held accountable. The issue is that what we were seeing taking place in other places was using test scores, and that's a big concern from our members, to know that a test might be used to get you out of the profession when the test is not really a valid measure of that teacher's effectiveness. And the concern is that the test, the measurement of academic progress, is not being used for any high stakes for the student themselves. Your grade doesn't go up or down depending on how well you do on the test. You don't get held back in the same grade. And so to use a test that kids don't care about, that is not designed to measure teacher effectiveness, is a big concern. Members started to organize. One of the things they did was to speak out publicly, both in the media and with family members, community members, neighbors.
We're ready for change.
We're ready for change.
Seattle educators have joined with the district
to try something new,
to find a better way,
to increase student learning,
to hold all educators accountable,
to make sure great teachers are in every classroom.
Now it may not happen.
It's being blocked by one administrator.
One administrator
who wants to undo this historic change.
And we finally just asked the question, what is it that we can bargain in this proposal? And the district chief negotiator finally said, we have to have something on test scores. I think at that point, we still were thinking, how do we get out of this? But we went to lunch, held a caucus, and came up with an idea for a compromise proposal that is ultimately what got accepted and is in our contract today. We are meeting some of the district's needs, but still meeting the value that we have as an organization that final evaluations and high-stake decisions based on those evaluations should not be based on test scores. So our compromise was this. If the average of all the tests that your kids take over 2 years shows that less than 35% of kids in your class are making typical growth, then the principal is required now to sit down with you and have a conference about what might be going on in the classroom, and they're required to come in and do 2 observations in September and October. I want to emphasize that the final evaluation under the system that we have bargained is strictly the evaluation tool itself, the observation of your principal as it's always been done in the past. There is nothing in the final evaluation that is tied to test scores, academic achievement goals being met, school-wide growth, or surveys for parents, peers, or students.
All over the country, the union-busting forces of, quote, educational reform have been winning and teachers have been losing. We stop that from happening here. The district wanted merit pay, teacher evaluations tied to test scores. They wanted RIFs according to seniority, and they wanted serve, and we stopped them from getting it. They only got 10% of what we want, and we preserved 90% of what we have. We stopped the union busters dead in their tracks.
Seattle wins with this contract. In fact, this contract places the Seattle Teachers Union and the Seattle School District at the front of the national education reform movement that is being led by President Obama.
We at El Centro de la Raza are grateful to the teachers, the Seattle Education Association, and the Seattle School District for negotiating and agreeing to a contract that will benefit all students.
This is a real culture shift in Seattle Public Schools. Student achievement will drive decisions at all of our schools.
The focus on putting effective teachers in the places where they're needed most, the schools that struggle the most, the students who are the furthest behind, putting effective teachers in those schools is probably job one as far as I'm concerned with this contract, and this contract kept those students at the heart of the conversation.
We do have historic change here in Seattle for a number of reasons. The vast majority of teachers understand that when there's one bad apple, it spoils the whole bunch, and you get painted in a picture because of a bad experience. Teachers want to be held accountable, and they want their colleagues held accountable. And so if you're not proficient, you might not be here teaching in the coming years. The fact is, we are looking at test scores now. We're not quite looking at them the way the district wanted it first. We're looking at it in a more humane way where an administrator looks and says, hey, something's going on here, and I need to get back in that classroom to see what's going on. You can't just use the test score to be the deciding factor. You've really got to look at the overall practice that someone has in their classroom in determining whether or not they should be teaching.